into the poems, and my first one, the first poem I'm going to read is entitled "My Friend Jack." My friend Jack keeps pulling his life behind him, keeps pulling a wagon filled with trash from the past. The old Victorian lamp reminds him of his mother with its stern, overdone shade. The gilded scene reminiscent of phony platitudes. The greasy carburetor is the same one his father labored over for hours in the garage. Near the bottom of the pile lies a barely bronze trophy, a runner that was once significant, but years of neglect had left it tarnished and mostly forgotten. Jack keeps finding more and more items to add to his trash wagon. Broken toys from his childhood. The shabby stuffed bear with only one button eye. The inner workings of what was once a bright Liana steam engine. A faded Star Wars Pez dispenser. He wobbles with the wagon down the same familiar streets, unaware of the birds that perch precariously on the top. The lattice of leaves gently brushing the wagon. The pedestrians that tip their hats and move aside while he searches for something else. Poets like to talk to each other, and they're really good at offering advice. And sometimes we're good about accepting it, and sometimes not so much. And so that's kind of what this poem is about. I've written a couple of poems sort of like this. This one's called Another Quarrel. We're back at it again. This time he wants me to let the poem marinate. Put it away for a year so you can look at it with a fresh mind. As we approach Little Heart Lake, the water trembles, and all I can think about is here's the next line. The shadows are falling across the trail at this exact moment. The dead deer in the weeds will never be dead again. Her swollen belly stewing in the sunlight, her stiffened limbs stretching toward the sky. The fields open themselves, and what waits is mostly indescribable. A small, tight hawk stationed on a hayrick, a rich gown of sparrows rising from the wild oats. I spent the last couple of years, I've been spending some time in the Southwest. We have a travel trailer, and it's just been a wonderful experience. And I'm finding that some of the imagery is creeping into my poems, and this is a poem that sort of reflects that. It's called January Morning on the Mesa. This morning, as the first clear sunlight makes its way over the mesa, I walk my dogs through the arroyo, where muted sandstone and empty space meet in a convergence of beauty. A mile away at Cathedral Rock, hundreds of crows are floating, rising upward in dark clouds. Sammy turns his head to the west, then whimpers with concern. Penny lifts herself upright from the smooth rock, ears erect, sniffing the cold air. I see the ancient lineage of wolves in their eyes. In half an hour, we reach a canyon where the steep slopes quickly climb right into the open sky, the horizon broken only by an uneven outline of rimrock. A red-tailed hawk screes before snapping the branch on a desert mesquite and disappears into the cosmos. As we follow the riverbed's scrawl signature, over stained rock, striated veins, hard scrabble, we are walking in unison, almost like the relentless movement of water. The myriad stars that will shine tonight are still invisible, but the moon looms large over the mountains. Well, that poem that I wrote about my brother, the one about the wild burros, this is sort of a follow-up on that one, and it's called Starlight Might Be Enough. The road is punctuated with cholopods, whorls of feathers, an occasional sidewinder. He's on his way to Gila Flats, 3 good tires and a 4th that won't survive. All day, he thinks about clouds, about the way they form, how they gather like melons in a field, or the sweeping manes of horses in the wind. He knows it's best to hold on loosely to the wheel, let the road follow its natural course. The engine winds past broken fences, lights shining off a red arroyo. He swerves and sways, then rights the camper on the center line. As the evening comes on, the radio broadcast fades to static. A crescent moon transforms the desert. Drifting to the right, he pulls over, opens the door to the night air. He sighs and lights a cigarette, takes a deep draw, then throws his head back and marvels at the stars. Sometimes I'm finding that I sometimes I write about relationships that are on the edge, and there's a certain kind of an energy when you write about that, and it also transfers to the rhythm of the poem. And so that's what this is. This is a poem about a relationship that's sort of on the brink. Well, it's been on the brink for a long time. And it's called Second Chance. Leaning over the staircase, the lavish bougainvillea obstructs most of Manuel's view. And without thinking, he calls out, Jacinta, mi único amor. Jacinta, my one love. Jacinta turns completely around in the hotel lobby, and right away he knows he will never be able to avoid her eyes again. Suddenly he finds himself drifting back 3 years when they were together, sipping tropical drinks called Pájaro Blanco, which now seems strange because the crimson red glasses in no way resemble a white bird. More like the blood of a bird, roja, red. He says out loud, like their steamy relationship in Mexico City. Images start to fill his head, shards of broken dishware. The policia drumming loudly on their apartment door. Still, now Jacinta is here in Antigua, silent and beautiful, in a pale green gown, glowing in the evening afterlight. In what seems like just a fleeting thought, he sees her in another memory. She's in the kitchen, opening each page of a cookbook with the lick of her tongue on her right pointer finger. And he thinks to himself, how seductive. She even uses her sexual energy when cooking. He watches intently as she crooks her wrists with each blow of an egg on the side of an earthenware bowl. My, he ponders, such power. as she carelessly tosses each shell into the wastebasket. She doesn't seem to notice the powdery flour on the edge of her apron. Outside the kitchen window, a sparrow bobs along the edge of the drainpipe. That was 6 years ago, before everything collided. Gabriel Garcia, his only friend from the law firm of Sanchez, Alvarez, Garcia, and Pena, warned him about his excesses. The late dinner parties, the endless tab at La Luna Azul, the women, and by the way, La Luna Azul means the blue moon, and I think people in Coos Bay will appreciate that. Yet he never seriously believed his meteoric rise would come spiraling down, and that even Jacinta would finally have enough. He still remembers the sound of the slamming door, her footsteps descending the staircase, then fading out into the street. Somehow, after everything, now he finds himself here in Antigua, looking at Jacinta, standing beneath a huge revolving fan while the lights from the hotel lobby play on the furniture, bathing the balustrade in steady patterns of cinematic movement, like one of those old-time movies, flickering over the otherwise white walls, but now pale ochre in a strange way, reflecting her mood. The last poem I'm going to read is one that was, a friend of mine asked me to read this poem. And it's called Autumn Song. Well, it's spring, not autumn. But I think maybe the content would be a pretty nice thing to read right now. It's dedicated to John Strassman, and it starts with an epigraph. Prayer. Thou art everywhere, but I worship you here. Thou art without form, but I worship you in these forms. Praise the sunlight streaming through the canopy of leaves. Praise the tractor pulling a flat wagon with bales in a stubbled field. Praise the twisted branches, the shells of acorns scattered beneath the oaks, the wands of Queen Anne's lace, crows circling the corn stalks. Praise summer's end, last blossoms on the honeysuckle vines, the rusty rake leaning on the barbed wire fence, yellow and green grasses wavering in the wind, a daylight moon in a strikingly blue sky. Praise the barn owl hovering near the cloud bank. Praise billows of leaf smoke, caribou prints in muddy ruts, yarrow along the fence row, the goldenrod, trails of red chicory, thimbleberries, as the sun slips behind the purple hills. Praise this broken world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And it's so good to see you, Stan Zumbiel.
Stan apologizes for being late. There was traffic, which in these days means there was laundry piled in the hallway.
Okay, let me mute myself.
If you guys are going to argue, then yes, no muting. When we first spoke, we had a dry run of this last week. And when I was talking to Stan and Tom and Liana, it turned out that Stan and Tom were in school together. And the argument over who would go first determined who would go first for me, as far as I was concerned. So I put Tom in the start. That way Stan had to read second. Sure, at any rate, their own issues going, whatever they want to do, or however they want to argue, I don't want to say anything. But
It's an ongoing thing.
Yeah, it's an ongoing thing. I'm just trying to stay out of it. Stan was supposed to be here, as I said, in April, but current events dictated otherwise, and I'm happy to say that he's part of it today. We're thrilled to have him, and I hope someday we can actually have him here in the library. He taught English in middle and high school for 35 years in suburban Sacramento, and I think he prepared for that by being, by years before that, enlisting in the United States Navy. But while he was in the Navy many years ago, it was in 2008 that his first book came out, 2016, that Standing Watch came out. 2008 is when he received his MFA. But Standing Watch, the title obviously referring, to board life. It kind of reminded me of the Hemingway statement about he could not write about Michigan until he was in Paris. And when Tom was just talking about being told the poem had to marinate, I kind of had to wonder if Stan was one of the people saying that, because I just love seeing memories written about, and when they've just started and when they go on and when they go on. And so it's like seeing that the poems came out, 30 years later. I think they've got to be marinated well and really marvelous. And I'm certain we're going to hear some of them. He has, sorry, I lost my track there. His poems have appeared in Nimrod, Primal Urge, Convergence, and Sacramento Voices, among others. And he still lives with his wife, Lynn, in their Fair Oaks home. And Stan, please. You'll need to unmute first.
Maybe we could have the whole reading and could be muted, and then maybe you would be better. But thank you for having me. I look forward to coming up in April, and but that didn't happen, and now I'll look forward to coming up again some future time when we can. But I'm very honored to be here amongst the Tom and Liana. It's it's great for me. It's terrific. All right, so I'd like to start my readings with reading from somebody else, just so we can get solipsism out of the way early. And I'm going to read from The Park by John Freeman. It's his most recent book from Copper Canyon Press. And I'm going to read the poem, Seeing Things. Excuse me. Now the trees rush, crackle in the dark. I sleep like a sailor on watch. I was told, look in the shadows for figures that freeze. I can see straight through the park. There are the canes, there beds, there a man washing his foot in rainwater. You do not need to be a hawk to see here. No one talks of this, how winter doesn't just strip bare. It allows us to see what's always been there. So John Freeman, look him up if you get a chance. And now you're stuck with me for the rest of the reading. And I'm going to start with an Oregon poem. I would have read this if I'd been up there, and it's called Eating Breakfast at the Morning Glory Cafe, Ashland, Oregon. And I don't know whether any of you Oregonites have been over there, but it's in 2 parts. Each part has a epigraph from Basho. Sad beauty, the morning glory, even when it's painted badly. Basho. Basho would have embraced the place. He would have loved the lively conversation surrounding each table. He would have loved the list of libations on the back of the menu, stimulant to get through the morning. He would have loved the waitresses of all ages not just girls, but women who have spent their lives bringing food to strangers, travelers passing through to the north and passing through to the south. No one, not even Basho, can see the ocean from here, although in a month they will see snow drifting down and capping the mountain just to the south and dusting their own trees. 2. The morning glory also turns out not to be my friend, Basho. Basho would never have stopped here. His search for a quiet mountain would have looked beyond the crowd sitting outside waiting patiently for a place to sit. There are other places to get food. Even the warmth, even the thick, heavy waffles soaked in syrup or sprinkled with fruit would not have made him linger. Even the morning light spilling through the skylights. The large and excellently painted flowers on the walls can't replace the humblest dandelion pushing up through a crack in the sidewalk.
Nice.
So now we're going to move to a different thing, building Wrights Mill Road. The sort of, idea of what is man doing to the environment and why. Building Wrights Mill Road, and it's in 2 parts. Surveyors, 2 guys with a transit notebook, birds rising around them, robins, cardinals, killdeer feign broken wings to defend their nests. The earth doesn't speak to the men. As they reduce to numbers, low hills and creek beds, they light luckies and picture the road bending over the hills, trucks from the mill hauling timbers for houses in town, for the new science building at the university. 2, big machinery, not like now, of course, levels the land, upends nests and scatters nestlings, fills the little swamp where they had to cut over the end of Lake Wilmore. What they thought a hill is a burial mound. The dozer opens the earth and exposes 1,000-year-old bones to the light, 1,000-year-old pottery buried to assist the dead, prayers undone and replaced by hot macadam, flattened by the weight of steamrollers and the cursing of sweaty men. 3, the road, shiny and black, stretches over the landscape. Surviving birds find new places to nest and swoop down onto the roadway to feast on roadkill, dodge cars and lumber trucks, perch on phone lines to sing their separate mating songs. So this next poem is about people in our lives that disappear, and where do they go, and do some people disappear completely? I don't know. It's called Dolly's Rooster, or How We Disappear. For great Aunt Ruth Zumbiel, the sister of my grandfather. It also has an epigram. Let your life lightly dance on the edges of time, like dew on the tip of a leaf. Rabindranath Tagore. A family gathers for a photograph. Father, mother, brother, one sister with a dog, one sister with a rooster sitting restively on her lap. 1. The rooster looks right into the camera, taking measure of the photographer holding his large black box. It looks into the lens, not in profile like an icon, and Ruth, the older sister, her hair piled on her head like a Gibson girl, looks at us too, her hand on her hip, ready to spring up and dance, whirling, taking her long skirt in her hands, exposing her ankles, and swinging to distant flamenco music, a single guitar drumming rhythm out of the earth. She would be at home in any Paris cafe, the focus of all poets in the room, notebooks on small tables with coffee or absinthe. 2. A door closes out the light. Conversations make music. Time becomes liquid, the tide pounding on some secluded rocky beach, eroding the shore, then retreating to a passive sea. She walks in dawning dark, young and beautiful. 3. She exists now as a framed, cross-stitched scene, brick house with a picket fence and beige windows and 2 yellowed crocheted doilies. Her initials, RZ, raised in the center. Now she is a China tea set, blue flowers around the rim. Once she sat with me on her lap, held my hand across the green backyard. I remember nothing except that she never married. I want time to be liquid, to carry me like a riptide backwards, so I could ask her whose heart she broke with her laughing eyes, why her disappointments died before she did, each lost in a confused kaleidoscope of Sundays, her music, hymns, and the quiet rhythm of needle and thread. 4. A light breeze flutters background trees. The dogs cock their head to see if something interesting is happening. The rooster nervously prances on her dancer's thighs and opens its mouth and cries out, as if it were dawn, as if there is a waking, as if it is the beginning. It's very strange to read like this because, you expect to hear boos or hisses or something, anything at all. All right. I listen near Eve.
Comments, I'll tell you, Stan, there are comments in the chat, and
In the chat, okay.
there's no booing, so.
Okay. I listen near eaves to falling water. You died so slowly that nurses had to look twice. The difference so slight from night to morning, when shallow breathing was no more, when the mind that read all Dickens in a summer faded to a single word of farewell. And now I'm going to read a poem from my book, Standing Watch, most easily available on Amazon. I think it's still available on Amazon. This one pretentiously has 2 epigraphs because we wouldn't want to leave it with just 1 epigraph if we could have 2. Hometowns. The background needs revising. You can return to your hometown, Beidou. So long as there's a hometown, you're not free, Koun. When you say hometown, you mean the place where an old girlfriend I hurt in the 6th grade still holds it against me. She sits in the bowling alley bar, wearing her 3rd divorce like a temple veil, listening to echoes of collision. You mean where family gathers in the backyard of my widowed father, drinks Miller High Life, eats seared meat with my aunt's potato salad, talks baseball and the progress of war. Where when I return from the sea, peacoat collar turned up against the wind, sea bag full of uniforms, books, poems, someone shouts my name from the parking lot of the market, making me forget F4 Phantoms and A4 Skyhawks, returning from bright green jungles, or those that didn't return, fire their last memory. Remembrance of the blind beginning. Hometowns don't exist. Too much drifting, too much moving, too much fire, too much time at sea leaves only faint shadows, scenery, people, villages swept away like smoke. And this next poem was published in an anthology here called Quiet Rooms. And it's quite a wonderful anthology. And this is a still life. And I have written about 50 of these where I try to describe what might just be sitting on a table and try to not have any action in the poem at all. So an interesting goal for a poet, no action. All right, still life with youth sports equipment. First, A mitt bought in the basement of the Montgomery wards, a mitt with dreams of scooping ground balls and snagging screaming liners, but never really had a proper pocket, no matter how much neat's foot oil was rubbed into the leather. An old baseball, scuffed from playing on the street, red stitching frayed. A Louisville slugger, Mickey Mantle model, all its hits still bound in its tight grain, leans on the table. 29 etched into the knob. A football and tee. A basketball worn smooth. A tennis racket in its wooden frame, strings broken. A can with 2 tennis balls. Only shadow where crowds once roared. Unlike Tom, I was no great athlete. Now or then or anytime. So, okay, so this next poem is the last poem that I'm going to read, and it's the first poem in a still unfinished sonnet crown. So this is a sonnet, and so it's the first one, the opening salvo. It too has an epigraph. There is song in tranquil movement. There is song in ceaseless descent. Anonymous. Collapsing barn. The corrugated tin sheets, the rusted roof, embrace the harsh ground. The other edges point to the bright sky. Rotten joists crumble with brute force as wood pulls from wood. Nails, pried from each joint, exclaim and lament. Hinges full with rust cry out. The swinging doors go down wide open. The hayloft is crushed. Remnant hay and dust rush and swirl like smoke from an explosion. The weathered walls split to allow sunlight in. The moss that covered the north side begins again on the broken north. Between the planks, grass grows. Insects, spiders thrive near the damp. In the wind, the roof sings like a silver tuning fork, inviting birds to nest, to sleep in the dappled dark. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan.
Stan, thank you. That was lovely. I'm going to pause here to do an announcement of an upcoming poetry event. Share my screen a moment here and show you that at the Coos Bay Library next week, there will be, come on, are you going to share? There you go. Terra Incognita Sampler, a virtual poetry reading in partnership with Bob Hill Publishing. This is the publisher's second poetry anthology, Terra Incognita, and as it says here, Oregon poets write for ecological, social, political, and economic justice. This will be Thursday, June 18th at 5:30 Pacific time. And if you'll go to the coosbaylibrary.org website, you will be able to find out how to attend this. Unless Tom Paul, would you like to say something about this? We'd be happy to have you talk.
Thanks, Drea. Appreciate that. Just had to unmute myself there. Yeah, but this is again another poetry reading that I planned on having back in March, and I had to actually cancel it the day before. A bunch of poets were going to drive from different parts of Oregon all the way out to the southern Oregon coast. So I'm excited. I got 5 poets from the anthology on board to do a reading via Zoom on the 18th of June at 5:30. And like Drea said, you can contact either one of us or go to coosbaylibrary.org. Thank you so much, Drea. Appreciate the plug.
Anytime. And we'll go ahead and put coosbaylibrary.org in the chat so that people can grab that.
I can cover that.
You can cover that. Thanks so much. Liana Sakelliou. Did I say it? Did I do it? Did I get
Sakelliou.
Sakelliou? Sorry. Oh, and
Thank you.
I had it before. I had it before, and this was something that Liana and I were talking about is, oh, how's the name going to sound today? And it's like, oh, such a scary thing. I'm going to share my screen once more, and this is for the Oregonians, because this is the picture Liana sent. Do you see the gold and the rose in the background? Just, isn't this lovely? I mean, we don't get this here. We don't get that sort of color here. It's just the photo could be called sun-drenched, which is just not a phrase we use. It's a nice day out. There was blue sky for a while and it's kind of blue now. We'd say this is fantastic in Oregon. And I just saw that and went, oh, it's a poet from Greece. I feel like such a hayseed, and I'm so happy that she has joined us. I had a bit of a problem when I was sent her bio, though, because, wow, if I read the whole thing, I should have started an hour ago, and we'd get...
Oh, come on, Drea.
I'm not kidding. It's a page and a half. I went through and I pulled out a couple lines from it. Linda Sakelliou, is a poet, translator, critic, editor, and member of the Hellenic Authors Society. She is currently supervising the Greek and English publications of her monograph entitled Creative Writing, Reading, Writing, and Living, Volume 2, Poetry. There was a Volume 1 that was prose, I believe. And she is also editing the translation of H.D.'s Helen in Egypt and The Sea Garden, which are products of her MA seminars on the Greek element in H.D.'s poetry for publication in the fall of 2020. This is edited down from the page and a half. I am just so thrilled and so honored, and welcome to everyone who is joining us remotely. I realize everyone's joining us remotely, but I mean, man, we have Greece here. We don't get that. You don't go to North Bend. No one goes to North Bend. So we're thrilled to have you all here. We really are. And I'm going to stop the hayseed now. I will say that Liana is going to be reading a few of her poems, at least, in Greek and in English, which again, big treat for us. And so with all that, I will mute and stop the gushing that way. Liana.
Drea, thank you so much for inviting me. Thanks so much, Tom and Stan, for the wonderful readings, and thank you all for being here. We are truly honored. Okay, I hope you enjoy our reading. So I'll read some poems from my second collection of poetry, which is entitled Take Me Like a Photograph. They've been translated from the Greek by David Connolly. This collection is a meditation on photography and its understanding of beauty, on the perception of beauty and the ephemeral. And part of the effort was the collaboration between a photographer from San Francisco and whose name is Elena Sheehan. And she sent me her black and white photographs and I wrote poems for these photographs. So I'll start with the study by a Flemish master, which is a poem about teaching painting, but it's also a poem about teaching any art, and especially poetry. He sits evergreen in the prow, with a movement of the hand as if painting them. He shows me the size of the facing mountains. He wants us to cross the lake as far as the borders, and for me to leave him where he never was. It's dark. I plunge the oar's blades into the somber expanse. In the tenseness, The boat smells of thick vegetation. Owls fly in and out of the leafage at its every propulsion. The rowlocks creak. I rustle. He works in silence. And I'll read it in Greek. Κάθεται στην πλώρη αϊθαλής. Με μια κίνηση του χεριού, σαν να του ζωγραφίζει, μου δείχνει τους όγκους των απέναντι βουνών. Θέλει να διασχίσουμε τη λίμνη μέχρι τα σύνορα και εκεί να τον αφήσω, σε αυτό που δεν ήταν ποτέ. Είναι σκοτάδι. Βυθίζω τις λεπίδες των κουπιών στη σκούρα έκταση. Στην ένταση, η βάρκα μυρίζει βλάστηση πυκνή. Κουκουβάγες μπαινοβγαίνουν στα φυλλώματα σε κάθε οθυσή της. Οι σκαρμοί τρίζουν. Θροίζω. Δουλεύει στη σιωπή. The second poem's title is The Garden of Ryoan-ji, and it refers to the Zen Buddhist temple in Kyoto, Japan, made of stone. And there are different meanings to this stony garden. And the final interpretation, of course, depends on the viewer. So the Garden of Ryoan-ji. He thought of fashioning a sea, or a garden like a sea, a garden of nothing, a garden of rock, that the moon on the rock might clothe it in sea. Man learns its secret knowledge, the void that it crushes, insists on hewing it like an impatient sea, like a garden with new gestures in the air. He returns joyful from the white density that he curves, places the dust in the furrow of his lips to savor not the salt, the nothingness. Mammography on the subject of motherhood. He crossed mountains to reach the land after its king's invitation. He knew how to dissect bodies and to draw ladies' portraits, and he painted her, with her looking him in the eyes, with a smile for a ring, with her hair loose, with a light on her breast, her hands, her face, leaving the fragrance of fertility. The belly secretly swelled, and death appeared, like a promise in a hurry to be filled. In the background, a bridge, a landscape formed from the power of water and the valley of hell. I crossed a town after his summons. He calls me Lisa. I call him Leonardo. Gently, he pushes my back, and I stop breathing. The machine captures my particles, and dolomites like teeth rise up on the black screen. Now my face and expressions no longer appear. Isolated from the smile, or from the need to use it, like her, I feel almost beautiful. And the last poem, thank you. And the last poem from this collection, it's called Words Are Supple Petals. The floor caught fire, the world caught fire, the spirit caught fire, flexible fire enveloped every stone. He overcame the intensity, motionless, cross-legged on the floor. Alive the words, wrestled with the language, with the head, frantic, winged words, flame and blood. Give life to the petals, keep them hydrated. They alone passed through the fire. Words are supple petals. My third collection is called Portrait Before Dark, and it's about an event in 2009. My neighborhood and the pine forest around us caught fire, and my neighbors lost houses and cars and trees. And after this disaster, I left Greece and my Black Forest to go to Green England, and specifically to West Sussex, where I was invited to support in residence. It was a private college which served as a palace in the 19th century, owned by Edward James. And Edward James was patron of the arts. And I have his black and white picture here. And I went there invited, and I wanted to write about the experiential changes of Edward James and his exotic Viennese dancer wife, Tilly Loche, who was also a star in the 20s. So the poems I wrote form a dialogue sequence, and they lack titles. So the book's title refers to Edward James' dark life, and at the same time to my dark forest. So some of the poems appeared in American Poetry Review, and they have been translated by Aliki Barnstone. I am the boy in a sailor suit. I amble magically in the sea forest. Exotic birds in my leafy hair, holding a tuba to stave off feeling scared. The freighter is white, its smokestack tall. Black boots, cotton batiste camisoles, feathered hats. My mother wore silk, the color of oysters, and pearl necklaces looped around her throat. I gave her absence to metaphysics. I said to her, let's not talk about faces. Let's talk about the face. Your eyes scanned me. Ripples spread on foliage in the gorge. A light rain. Nothing compares with woodlands. You said, were you ever there beyond the leaves? You touched me, and I began to grow. Rich brown roots, unforeseen. Something like a jungle encircled my leaves, snake-like. Petals sprinkle everywhere, tangle in my hair, stick on my dress, until I too flower like her, touched by who knows what. A horse groomer asks, what happened to you? I answer, a bizarre tree electrified me. And thank you. It's from my last collection. The title is Where the Sweet Breeze Blows, and I'm very happy to have Don Schofield here, my translator of the whole book. So I'll read some poems from this book, from my last book. Since childhood. Think of the body on the sand, palms and arms open wide, an arrow cleaving the air, a brief surprise in the heavens before it changes course and falls to the earth where it belongs, and in the process, making a bridge. Think of the neck and chest extended, the waist and pelvis straining, the pull of every tissue, the practiced body in an earthly arc, just to add another color, the one that over the years we forget, the indelible one. The Conquest, July 21st, 1969. After the moon landing, I thought I could walk on water and balance myself like Armstrong. With an expression of maximum intensity, Aunt Vula fixed lucumades in the kitchen, all of us sweet and ecstatic, shouting, "Yippee!" looking first at the moon, then at the black and white image on TV. It too had scales and gray holes at dusk. "Ah, those Americans," she said. "First Peyton Place, then the moon." As for me, I didn't know where I wanted to travel first, to the moon or to America. Greta Garbo at Kivelia. It has an epigraph here. It comes from an interview Greta Garbo gave to a person from the island of Poros. She said, "My family was poor. I started working at 14 in a beauty shop. Then fate came along in the guise of director Moritz Stiller. We didn't know her, but the Athenian holiday makers kept turning to look at her. In a pastry shop on the waterfront, she was the only blonde. I liked the huskiness of her voice, how she tittered when she laughed, putting a hand over her lips, and the way, while enjoying her sweet, she stretched her calves and straightened her skirt. We were teenage boys in the boondocks, savoring a sweet and watching her. I decided then and there, I'll marry a blonde who smokes and has arched eyebrows and become a hairstylist. In my own salon, above the mirror, I'll hang a big picture of her." And I'll read 2 more poems. Do I have time, Drea? Okay.
You take all the time. Keep going.
5 minutes, right? Okay. Bird of Death, April 21st, 1967. Everyone remembers exactly where they were when they heard the news. Did the bell ring for the break? Did my mother come early to pick me up from school? Did I run down the stairs? Did the teachers speak about a revolution? Was it sudden, they said? I encoded it in Alice, in callous, in gifts I found in packs of clean, while the tanks were bruising Achernon Street and Mount Parnitha was becoming the mass disappearing in the horizon, until the other side appeared upside down in the color of fire, in the ashes of the nest, in the dark soldier. I learned to watch the news, to listen to marches, and to the bucolic life from the radio signal, even in the cinema, to wear proudly the school badge, to celebrate the football games fanatically. 1 score, 2 scores in the air, Panzo Hellas rises up. 1 score, 2 scores, such a day, spring is in the heart. To keep distances, to make distinctions, to hide behind walls that never existed, to make tight braids in my hair and to enjoy the boy's short haircut, to speak in puristic Greek, to make spells, riddles, an everlasting student myself, and smile at all that happened to me unawares. Tree of Life. When I was young, my mother had an operation. What remained was a scar crossing her back like a swollen rivulet, and a small transparent box, inside of which was a tiny tree, porous and grey, with many branches, what the doctors uprooted from her damaged kidney and gave to her in that box like a present. She placed it carefully inside her drawer. My mother's name is Zoe, which in Greek means life, so I called it Tree of My Life. Later, in the East, I found carpets with a tree of life woven into them. This one was an apple tree with round, red fruit. Under its thick foliage, my mother was always there. Thank you. Thank you.
Liana, thank you so much. Thank you, Liana, Tom, Stan. Thank you to all who attended. This was lovely. It has been live streamed to YouTube, but once it goes, I'm going to actually take the recording and put it on YouTube since, of course, live streaming did not start right away. Learning. Anyway, we are so thrilled that everyone was here. We look forward to seeing you at the next events. I don't know if anyone's been looking at the chat. I have wonderful comments all through this. Paul says, muy bien, señor Tom. Tom is thanked for his wonderful poems, especially the last one dedicated to John Strassman by Sharon Larkham. Wendy Tronrud, I don't know if I said that right, sorry, is one of Stan's former students and says, yay. The Morning Glory poem was loved by Joan Canby. Susan Kelly DeWitt, wow. Constantinos, time becomes liquid. Oh, I felt that we all did. Don Schofield loved a strong poem. Paul Addis loved the descriptions. Great, cool, still life. Indeed. It goes on, it goes on, it goes on. Please stop and take a look at these. I will leave the, I frankly will leave the chat open for a while so that everyone can get a chance to look at these and continue the conversation. As for me, I must end, so I'm just going to basically turn my camera off and thank everyone once more for coming. If you want to unmute and talk, well, would people like to unmute and talk? Is there a Q&A or anything that we should be holding now? See if there's anything down here. Would people like a Q&A? No one's saying yes. What? No. Sure, why not? Let's unmute everyone. Suddenly everyone who's been listening with everything happening in the background is going, wait, what? No, 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 no.
That was great, all. Thank you so much. You guys all complimented each other beautifully. Great descriptions. Just awesome work. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. And thanks so much for watching this. This is so untypical for all of us, isn't it? It's my first time. And I see wonderful faces, friends, and very dear friends, my translator, and very excellent translators and poets, and Georgia Carvonacchi. Also, she's a wonderful translator from Greek into Italian, to the Italian, and Mimi, and my wonderful friend Ann Garvin from ages ago. from when we were in our 20s. So it's a wonderful experience for me. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say,
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
I just wanted
Mimi.
to say I'm so honored to, okay. I just wanted to say I'm so honored to have read with the two of you. Beautiful poetry. I had a great time, and interesting how this came about. Thinking how Stan and I barely got our first cup of coffee in the morning, and probably Liana is ready for her evening glass of wine. And, you know, the world is indeed flat. Just a great experience to be able to do this. I hope to be able to do it again.
I hope so too. I enjoyed your reading so much, Tom and Stan. Thank you. Thank you, Drea, for inviting us and for inviting me. Great.
Thanks goes to Tom, who is the one saying, hey, let's do this. And here, I'm going to bring these other people. And I said, great. We're in this new situation with all our programming, face-to-face programming stopped. Having someone suggest programming is like, oh, we're all so COVID brained that we can't think. So what a good idea. Thank you. But what you said about this being your first Zoom, I would not have thought this was your first Zoom meeting.
Doesn't it show?
I'm looking down at someone's picture and then wonder why they're not looking at me. And it's a thing that we're looking at, is the fact that we're all having to stare at this thing. And I saw someone posted on Facebook today that she had pictures of her children up by her camera as a way to remind herself that that's where she needs to look when she's doing a Zoom meeting. So,
okay.
pictures of our kids and things, but the cat.
I'd like to thank you all too. And I don't know how it looks to you, because I know Zoom puts people in random places, but on my screen, I'm right next to Liana, and the bookcases align perfectly in the back. It looks like we're in the same, we're actually in this, not social distanced at all.
I wanted to say how beautiful your bookcase looks.
All bookcases are beautiful.
Yeah, okay. Great. So
Drea,
thank you all. And thank you, Dawn, for doing these wonderful translations. Okay. Thank you.
Drea, thank you for coordinating all of this. I know it didn't just happen by itself.
Thanks for coming.
No kidding. Just getting Stan on board, that was enough all by itself.
It was fun.
When this is all over, we will all be old hands at this. And I will be staring right there, I'm sure. Well, thanks everyone for staying. Oh, I'm sorry, Tom, you were going to say something.
No, I'm good.
Thanks everybody for coming. It was
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Everyone have a lovely day, have a lovely evening. Have a lovely glass of wine, no matter the time.
Drea, let us know when you post on YouTube.
Will do, will do.
Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you all.
Bye.
Great honor. Thank you.
Great honor. Bye, everybody.